The first time that I met Donald Trump was at a party at Jeffrey Epstein's mansion. There was an orgy going on.
Katie Johnson's name is back in the news. So this YouTube video I did 1 million years ago is getting recycled and re-uploaded right now. And it's your job, dear viewer, to share the link. A couple of nights ago, I was in a bar not drinking alcohol with a beautiful young woman who was, and she was telling me that she had hopes and dreams of being a journalist, being a writer, being a filmmaker, and she's going to accomplish none of that in life. You know why? Because she doesn't have the nerve. She doesn't have the courage. I was saying to her, come on, you can buy an airplane ticket to any of these places tomorrow. Doesn't matter if it's Syria or Libya or Jerusalem, you name it. Get on an airplane, make the story you want to make, tell the story you want to tell, whether it's on YouTube or Substack or whatever. Stop pretending you're dependent on some magazine to hire you, some corporation, some news channel, right? That era, that epoch is over. It's up to people like you and me to do the research, do the work, and take the risks. And you know what she said back? She said she would never do that because she's afraid she's going to get killed. And I said, hey, I'm not going to lie to you. You know what? It might kill you a wee bit. You might step on some landmines. But you were the one saying you wanted to be a real journalist. You wanted to tell truths that had never been told before. If you want to go out there and drag something from the unknown into the known, from the darkness into the light, it takes courage. It takes nerve, and you can't wait for someone else with the formal job title of being a journalist to take those risks.
Yes, everything that I say at this interview will be the truth. I met Donald Trump at some parties I attend that I was working for Mr. Jeffrey Epstein. The first time that I met Donald Trump was at a party at Jeffrey Epstein's mansion. There was an orgy going on, and he was kind of watching off in the distance, and he basically asked if I could come over and give him a hand job. And at first I wasn't very comfortable with it. This was like my first party, and I didn't think that was my responsibility. But my recruiter told me that I needed to do it, so I agreed to. And then he, began to. Sorry, this is a little difficult, but Jeffrey Epstein is a billionaire friend of Donald Trump's that was responsible for throwing the sex parties. I originally came to New York trying to be a model, and in my travels I met a girl named Tiffany there who was very interested in me and said that that's what she did, is that she helped girls get what they wanted, and she could help me get into modeling, that she knew a lot of people that were higher ups, and that it would be no problem. And so that's why, but I would just basically have to come model at a couple of events and meet some people. It would be no sweat. So, of course I went, that sounded like no big deal. And she was recruiting the girls to come to these parties. And as far as Donald Trump, he knew that I was 13, and I believe that Tiffany told him he seemed to take a liking to me because I was I was so young, and I was also a virgin. So I don't know. It seemed like he wasn't really into having girls that were liked by the other guys. He kind of, the whole glove. He kind of liked things to be his first. If that, for lack of a better term, but he was the one who wanted to get to a girl before everyone else did. Donald Trump knew that I was 13 because the first night that I was there, Tiffany actually suggested that, she had a whole bunch of different wigs, and I expressed interest in them. I always told her that I would love to walk around with blue hair, and so I tried some on, and there was a blonde wig that she said that looked great on me. So I wore that wig, and Donald Trump had specifically asked about me because I remind him of his daughter, and she said, well, she's 13 as well. So he knew the first time that he saw me, but he took a liking to me because I look like his daughter.
Journalism is dead. What has yet to die is public faith in journalism. What has yet to die is the widespread habit of mind whereby people presume that any important case of this type would be investigated by journalists and presented to them by journalists, with that investigation and representation being proportional to the importance and merit of the case. I have read the legal documents that were filed for this case. If you take the time, you can too. There is absolutely no valid reason to trivialize or dismiss the legal documents that were filed for this case. In terms of invalid reasons, if an historian 50 years from now were to look back and ask the question, how is it possible that such astounding allegations against Donald Trump were ignored for so many years in a session? There are some invalid reasons that are worth noting and remarking on. First and foremost, in the year 2016, public interest in Jeffrey Epstein was almost zero. And it's difficult to remember that now. But really, the storm of controversy surrounding Jeffrey Epstein and his arrest came several years later. Number two, and I just note the autobiographical accounts of one of the journalists who handled this investigation and bungled this investigation. He says part of his own thinking was just shaped by the expectation that Donald Trump would lose the election, which is stupid. It is fundamentally stupid to dismiss this case because of the assumption that Donald Trump will lose the election and then it won't matter. It matters. These allegations matter. And of course, obviously, the case against Jeffrey Epstein also in its own right, on its own merits, mattered. But even if Donald Trump had never run for president of the United States, this case would matter and should have been taken seriously by journalists in a way that it never was. Emily Sugarman is repeatedly referred to as one of the only journalists who ever spoke to the woman you've just seen on video, or perhaps the only woman. Now, Emily Sugarman was incompetent. Emily Sugarman was an imbecile, and from what I can see, she has either invented or been crucial in propounding this doctrine that we don't even know if this woman ever really existed. Note the headline here. Wait, Katie Johnson actually exists? Absurd, unforgivable incompetence on the part of the journalist here. Quote, I don't know if Johnson wrote that letter. In fact, I don't know if the Katie Johnson I spoke to is the same girl who Trump allegedly raped in 1994, or if that girl even exists. Here's the website for lawyer Evan L. Goldman of Goldman, Davis, Krumholtz, and Dillon. Now, apart from the question of whether or not it would be possible to file so many legal documents with the courts in the United States of America if you don't exist, if the existence of the person as such were a hoax, right? If it were a hoax on that level, I don't know if it's possible to file so much paperwork with the American legal system. And again, to say that there is no evidence is a lie. 3 witnesses, 3 women who all have testimony, each corroborating the other, 3 women who were all in the same place at the same time and to whatever extent participating in this scenario. That is evidence. Eyewitness testimony is evidence. How dare you say there's no evidence? Do you think this guy, you think this distinguished lawyer. Do you think he would have knowingly participated in a hoax representing a person who doesn't even exist? And this lawyer still gives interviews to this day talking about what happened. And yeah, here's the crucial part. Why was the lawsuit dropped? Why was the case dismissed from court? Because this woman was afraid that she was going to be killed. And if you know anything about the Jeffrey Epstein case, if you know anything about how much money and power was supporting Donald Trump, it is not unreasonable that she was afraid that she was going to be killed. Someone stole her car and her cell phone. They received threats. It is not unreasonable at all that she was scared, and it would not be unreasonable for her to feel disappointed in the response she received from the press. She was expecting the press to leap forward and champion her case, and that never happened. It didn't happen in 2016 before the election of Donald Trump. It didn't happen after the election of Donald Trump. It still hasn't happened to this day. Journalism is dead. What needs to die next is this phony sense of expectation we have as readers that anyone else is going to do the research for us. You have to do the research for yourself.